This program is brought to you by Tab. We're on. Download the app today. What are you really gambling with?
Hello, I'm Caroline Searcy. Welcome to another week of Thoroughbreds Are Go, promoting the thoroughbred and giving current and future owners the tips needed for their horses to live a happy whole of life. Coming up this week, we're in Queensland at Life with Horses with a truly inspirational story about how thoroughbreds don't have to be ridden to be great companions and assistants for people of all levels of equestrian ability. Former jockey Kate Niparis is on a mission to compete at the 2024 Paris Paralympics. And yes, that is on a magnificent warm blood, but Kate also has loads of insight into the great prowess of thoroughbreds off the track. And Racing Queensland's Kim Duffy with another great and long-lasting love of the thoroughbred in Arrowfield Studs Strapper Stories. That's all coming up on another big week of Thoroughbreds Are Go. Kate Niparis was on an ascending path as a track rider and jockey when a track work incident left her in a wheelchair. As you'll see, she's not one to dwell on what might have been and has turned her inspiring drive towards competing in the 2024 Paris Paralympics. And while it is on a warm blood that was gifted to her by Peter V'landys and Racing New South Wales, Kate is a thoroughbred advocate through and through and has some great ideas about looking after the breed away from the racetrack. Fabulous to catch up with you. You're obviously on this great journey towards the Paris 2024 Paralympic Games and doing so much work to get there. We obviously are looking and talking about thoroughbreds here, but just first off, tell us about Cruz. He's just the most magnificent warm blood.
Cruz is beautiful. I'm very lucky to have him. He's by a warm blood stallion, but he's actually out of a thoroughbred cross Clydie mare who was born at one of the nanny farms where they have the Clydesdale mares and they use them for the orphaned thoroughbred foals.
So there's a quarter thoroughbred there.
Yeah.
But he's an interesting horse, isn't he? I mean, the work that you're doing, obviously, you had the accident, track work accident, you were riding thoroughbreds. How different is it to get on a horse such as this?
Well, when you have an injury like mine, where your legs don't work, one of the main attributes a horse you're riding needs to have is to be forward thinking. And thoroughbreds are very much that way inclined. They're a very forward thinking breed. I'm lucky that Cruz is as well, but thoroughbreds are also very good for para-equestrian because of that. They're quite a forward-thinking horse. You don't need to constantly be driving them with your legs or, in my case, your whips. They would also be very useful for this discipline.
When you're getting on and obviously you don't have the use of your legs, but how much does it take for a horse to understand then the whip aids and your voice? You're using your voice a lot. What are you doing? What are the different things that you've had to learn to do yourself to make the horse do what you want to do?
Well, training a horse to go off voice aids is something that I've done a bit throughout my life. When you're lunging a young horse, you train them to go off voice aids. So just like training a horse to do anything, you'll use a physical aid as well as the voice aid, and then you can take away the physical pressure. So I would give Cruz just a little tap with the dressage whips and click or say the voice aid, and then eventually he would just learn the voice aid.
And you really need assistance, obviously anybody getting to an elite level of any sport, and Rochelle and Greg are great. Explain what they need to do for you to get you on the horse and make sure that you're safe on the horse.
Greg and Rochelle are fantastic. I've known them for a really long time. I worked under Greg at Mullewa Stud when he was managing and I was just a teenager. He taught me so much about young horses and taught me how to handle the breeding stallions. I learned a lot from him. Greg was actually the first person to put me back on a horse a couple of years after my accident. So I came out here and this was where I first got back in the saddle. Greg and Rochelle assist, of course, with getting me on, helping with all my straps and things like that I need to make sure that I can stay in the saddle and stay balanced. I'm the only para rider that Rochelle coaches, so she's had some conversations with the Australian para equestrian coach about just the minor differences between para dressage and able-bodied dressage, but it's effectively the same training techniques and everything like that. So I come here and have regular lessons and she helps me with training crews.
What does it feel like? I mean, obviously, you know, your legs aren't working, but everything else is. What's it like being on top of that horse again, having gone through what you've gone through?
When I'm back on a horse, I forget that I'm even injured. Like the wheelchair's really inconsequential now that I'm able to be back doing what I live to do. The worst thing about being injured was not being able to ride. I thought that I had to walk again to be able to ride, so I was devastated at not being able to walk. But now that I can be back on a horse, it doesn't really bother me too much. I'm an ambitious person and I've always needed something to aim towards, and now that I'm on this path aiming towards the Paralympics, that's all I think about. I don't worry about what I can't control. I have no control over what happened to me and that I'm a paraplegic, but I have full control over how I handle it and what I choose to do now. So I just focus on that.
Thoroughbreds, I mean, we're seeing them in all sorts of disciplines, and obviously the point of this show is to try and encourage people to look at the diverse ways that they can be in a myriad of different roles, but they also are really good when it comes to handling something that's a bit out of the box.
They are. Thoroughbreds are exposed to a lot. They have a bit of a reputation just from people who aren't used to them, who aren't from the racing industry, of being hot horses or highly strung horses, but they're actually exposed to so many things that equestrian horses aren't exposed to. And from a young age, they're going to a race meeting on a regular basis. There's a lot going on there, big atmospheres, crowds, noise. We've found that some of the horses that we've used at EPA clinics, so Julia Badams has some ex-race horses, and I was the first para rider to ride a couple of them. And with the mounting process of getting me on, it's quite a lot for a horse that hasn't been exposed to it before. And we found that a lot of the dressage horses are a little bit perturbed by it, which you wouldn't blame them. The ex-race horses, the first time they were exposed to it, they were fine. They just stood there really quietly. Julia said, they're very good with the mounting process, aren't they? It's strange. And I said, I think it's probably because of what they're exposed to with the barriers. There are people up above them clunking around, barrier attendants and jockeys climbing on and off from up high, whereas equestrian horses are only mounted from the ground. They're not exposed to so much. So ex-race horses would absolutely be great at this sport. There are some riders that are using them already and have some that they're retraining to compete in paradressage. It's not that racehorses aren't educated, they're educated to do the job that they do, and they're very well educated to do that. Criticising a racehorse that's just off the track for not being trained in dressage is like asking Usain Bolt to do a gymnastics routine. He's very well trained in the technique of running and racing, as a racehorse is, but then asking them to do a gymnastic sport, they need to have the education to do that, that's all. If you just go home and watch the races, you'll see that in the run, where the jockeys just want the horses to be settled, their hands are down and still. And then when they straighten up and they want the horse to start working through their gears, they lift their hands, go for another hold, so effectively like shortening the reins in equestrian. So if someone gets on an ex-race horse, lifts their hands up, shortens the reins, and the horse takes off, it's just doing what it's being trained to do. Whereas they get a reputation of, oh, they've got a bad mouth, they're badly educated, they're bolting. It's just the way that they've been trained. So they need someone who understands where they're coming from.
And Equine Pathways Australia, EPA, as you mentioned, Julia Badams and Warren Moore, they do a fabulous job. Tell us about your relationship with them.
They do. So I met Julia Last year, I think it was May last year, that's when I got back into training to do competitive riding. Changed my life. Equine Pathways is amazing. It's the only organisation around for people in my situation that just have a physical injury that want to be able to get back to riding and potentially at an elite level. They understand racing as well, which was good for me. They understood what I'd done before and where I was coming from and the transition I was making to be going back to doing equestrian again. They're a fantastic organisation that changed my life. It is an expensive journey. I have a GoFundMe page called Please Help Me Fund My Paralympic Campaign. I've had some generous people assisting me with that, but there's still a long way to go. It's very expensive just travelling to the competitions. Of course, travelling a horse. I'm not from a horsey family, so I don't have parents who drive the float down. I'm paying for agistment. I don't have a property. I have a lot of expenses that I have to pay for to get to these competitions and just the day-to-day keeping of crews.
And just imagine getting to the Paris Paralympics and just full stop performing. Obviously performing well would be wonderful, but just, I mean, you must dream of it. It must just be in your thoughts all the time, everything you're doing.
If someone had told me when I was lying in a hospital bed, being told that I'd never walk, let alone ride again, that a few years later I would be on an Australian squad aiming to represent Australia at the Paralympics, I would never have believed them. I felt like my life was over and now I feel like it's just beginning.
A wonderful individual, and hopefully Kate Niperis gets more support for her Paris Paralympics goal following this story. Coming up after the break on Thoroughbreds Are Go, a wonderful piece on life with horses here in Queensland. While we see many thoroughbreds being used as competition horses when they retire from the racetrack, some just need a quiet home where they can also help build the confidence of the humans they come in contact with. Life with Horses here in Queensland is a fabulous organisation helping both horses and humans. It's so fabulous to meet you here at Life with Horses. It's an incredible organisation you have. But
Thank you.
Take us back to the beginning. I know Frank and Christine Cook, they're such popular and big owners in the racing industry. They were a big support for you in getting things up and running.
Yeah, oh, gonna cry.
Well, start again.
Yeah.
It is so important to have people in the racing industry really passionate about what happens to horses when they're not either racing or continuing on breeding, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it's so great to see different levels of people within the racing industry being so supportive and passionate about their aftercare as well and what happens to these beautiful animals.
And you yourself, okay, so you have Crohn's disease, which is to do with ulcers and things like that. But it's about, with these horses, how they come through racing with little niggles. They can have injuries, they can have problems, they can have ulcers, all those sorts of things. And you're really giving them something that they can be looked after. They don't have to be in competition. They can find a great life through what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the biggest passion. I mean, I've lived and breathed it through my life. I had Crohn's while in a high-end corporate job, in and out of hospital the whole time and burnt out. And I just wanted to give back to not only the horses, but the humans, and being able to provide this safe space for these horses that do need a little bit extra TLC in their retirement, to give them the time and the energy that they need to just heal at their pace instead of rushing them onto something else because we need to rehome them. I want to give them that energy and time, and then they get to have a lovely life here helping other people as well. So it's a win-win.
And I love how you explain the fact that, you know, these horses are, you know, when anyone's trying to rehome a horse, it's hard enough to find good homes for them. But when they have these little niggling issues, they do take time.
Yeah, they do. And they take a lot of money as well, you know, whether it's ulcers or bacteria, seedy toe in the foot or tendon issues, there's always something, and it just needs that extra time and a lot of money, and people don't have that, or they don't want it, and that's fine. You know, some people just want to hop on a horse and enjoy them, which that's what the relationship is, but we're not worried about that. I in particular love having that connection while helping these horses heal. It's just that bond that I build with them through that time is just so special to me. We do it to ourselves. It's not just the animals, you know, we push and push and push to be the best that we possibly can in whatever we choose, and our athletes are the perfect example. Whether it's football, swimming, Olympic sports, we strive for gold, and that's our focus. We don't focus on anything else. We don't think about what happens when we retire or if we get injured, and then when that happens, we're at a loss, you know, but luckily being humans, there's always something, you know, to fall back on. That's what we're doing for these guys. All right, so what are we going to focus on?
Okay, breathing.
Yeah.
Being in tune with Fance. So it's probably the best decision I've ever made to actually get involved in this, just emotionally as well. Really helped me to centre, but working with them, it has just brought out so much joy. It's been a totally new experience in that you have to give so much of yourself and let go of you so much. It's been a real, like I can't express how much joy I get out of it. It's my favourite time of the week. Having a disability with my neural centres and things like that, so I thought it was really a great way of trying to actually get my emotional component of dealing, learning to breathe again and settling down, so it's been fantastic.
Walk on. Good girl.
Whoa. Oh, good girl.
And Andrew's a great story. Obviously, he loves racing, he loves thoroughbreds, but he obviously needs that interaction with these horses. Tell us a bit about what's happening for Andrew.
Andrew's a very special soul, and we're very lucky that he came across us. He's done other equine therapy programs before and didn't get what he needed, so he thought he'd give us a go because he has a connection with the racing world as well. So for him, it ticked a few boxes, and he's done an amazing job. You know, at first it was just the horse and him relationship, but he's progressed so much further now where he can actually work with our horses and help me train them on those basic groundwork skills while getting that therapy or animal experience, horse experience that he requires to help him adjust it into the normal world with humans. And specifically that relationship side of things, yeah.
Like Fancy I was working with before, a couple of weeks ago, she was just a mess, and I turned into a mess as well. So it was really incredible to actually witness that joint sort of syncing of how we both were feeling, and then working through that to actually get to the point where we could actually make things happen and do things. It was only a small thing, but huge, like a self-empowerment thing, because it was just like a real glad, joyous type happiness that was actually surrounds it when you actually can make it work.
You have to do it really calmly, don't you?
Yeah, and that's one of the big things I had to learn, was actually to lose the control, because so often as humans we want to control the situation, but I had to really read her and work from what she was giving me.
Excalibrator out in the centre, coming at him.
Well, Excalibrator, it all started with him, I guess. It's Frank and Christine Cook. A Hinchinbrook gelding he is, known as Scallywag, you call him. Tell us about him and how he kind of set everything up for you.
Yeah, he did. Was so blessed to get him. When I first got him and let him off the lead, he ran around like a maniac, and I was like, what have I done? Through helping him with his healing as well, a beautiful relationship and bond has been formed. You know, they talk about heart horses. He's not a heart horse, he's something else, because he knows when he's working with an inexperienced human. He knows when to be a really big, soft, gentle soul. He also knows how to run really fast. So it's beautiful watching this horse transition and wear different hats when working with different humans. And he's the director of Life with Horses. He's the reason I started it. As soon as I realised the capability of this horse, the brain started ticking, the mind map started, and that's how Life with Horses was formed. It was beautiful. Another one. I'm greedy, another one. Good boy. Well done.
And you teach him really cool things as well. Like, it's really gorgeous for anybody coming here to see, you know, teaching him to give you a kiss or teaching him to bow and things like that. And the horses love learning something new, particularly thoroughbreds, don't they?
Yeah, well, they're working horses. They love being active. They love doing things. They're doers. But at the same time, they're big old puppy dogs. So with giving them the time and energy to heal, we're able to provide them a space to be really comfortable, be able to bring those personalities out, hence Scallywag, he's cheeky, but he loves to be interactive with us. So that's where all those tricks came out of play, and you can't stop him. He just loves doing new things with you, and it's really special. They're not dull, you know, and they get to be themselves in this environment, but at the same time in a safe environment.
And next is Brinkmanship. He's a Spirit of Boom 8-year-old. Really interesting, isn't it? When these horses aren't revved up doing competitions, they're just so docile and tractable.
Yeah, big old puppy dogs. Yeah, they are. When he got here, he wasn't as well. He's very much an energetic soul, and he still is. And that's the beauty. They're so relaxed, but when they need to perform, they will still. They're in there, but it's just providing them that space that it's okay. You can also just be a calm horse and be a horse and be yourself, and yeah, just love where we are and what they've got here.
And All Pluck was trained by Tony Golan. He went somewhere sort of after his racing career. He was a bit stressed during that time, but you know, he's a popular horse, you were saying, with everyone that comes out here. Him having a stressed sort of feeling, does that mean he kind of spots it more in humans and therefore understands it?
Yeah, he does. He's our key therapy horse. You know, Scally has a role to play with interactions, but Ducky, he can feel people's soul. He's very beautiful like that, very tender, very gentle. You know, he's a tall horse, and our young kids will soften to him so quickly, and he's just so gentle and beautiful. And if you're showing anxiety, he will stop, back away, let the person readjust their feelings and understand what they're feeling, come back to him, and if they've sort of leveled themselves or grounded themselves, he will open up his soul to them. It's really beautiful to watch.
Sea of Life will win again, though.
Sea of Life, a Sebring gelding. He's a 7-year-old, bred by Turunga Farm, Stewie Ramsey in the team, and was a Magic Millions horse as well. So important to see Queensland, you know, some of them bred, but certainly Queensland sold horses, getting these homes within Queensland.
Keeping it within our state and really keeping that passion and strength to support these beautiful animals in their retirement, whether they're sound or injured, I think is such a great thing. And if we can all gather together to back these guys in their retirement, it's just, yeah, perfect.
Just tell us a bit about how Kim Duffy and her team at Racing Queensland, the off-the-track programs, have helped you.
It's so heartwarming, and we wouldn't survive if it wasn't for their support. We launched in July 2 years ago, and the Queensland Off-the-Track grant came out later that year, and I was running on an oily rag, and without their support, we wouldn't have been able to be where we are today. And in 2.5 years, we've grown so well. We wouldn't have been able to do it if it wasn't for organisations like that. So it's a massive help. Vet bills alone are massive with these guys. They're not cheap, and if we're taking on the injured ones as well, they're just not cheap. So that support is phenomenal for us, and we're so grateful for it.
But people can donate. You are a charity. Come on, give it to us. What can people do, and how do they get in touch?
Yeah, look, we've got different avenues with this. You know, individuals, so girls that have always wanted a horse but could never have it. If you've got parents who have a young girl that loves horses, it's $80 a month and tax deductible, and they get 2 visits a month. So they get to experience owning a horse for a fraction of the cost, time, energy, all of the above. And then as they start to get comfortable, they can take on riding lessons with our specific coach who helps us train our horses in a specific way, which makes them safer for these young ones to get that solid grounding experience that in the future it can become a passion, and maybe one day they buy their own horse office. We then have corporates that come in and can do corporate team building days. So getting their team out into the country air, away from the big old, you know, cement world, and learn how to communicate and do team activities with beautiful animals. And then there's corporate sponsorship. So corporates can jump on board and sponsor an annual fee starting from $10,000. They get some logos, corporate branding with that, and then they get some experiences as well. So they can do a team building day, they can have one-on-one sessions with our horses. So we package it up so they have a really beautiful equine experience package.
And I know Frank and Christine are very proud of you and what you've achieved, and they obviously, you know, have backed something that they can see so much worth in. And you only have to see Andrew and see his staff and see the happiness what you're doing is giving to so many people.
Yeah, it is, and it's so touching to get that support. It's really beautiful, and it's so lovely just to have someone to say, you know what, we've got you, and this is we trust you with this, and and look what's happening with it. So yeah, it's a lovely story. It's my dream, it's my passion, and by George, I'm not letting it go. It's gonna stick around for a bit.
What an inspirational organisation, Life with Horses, and thanks to Kat and her team for having us here in Queensland. Coming up after the break on Thoroughbreds Are Go, Racing Queensland's Kim Duffy in Arrowfield Studs Strapper Stories.
So I used to ride track work at Doomben Racecourse for Bruce Brown Racing Stables, and one of my absolute favourites was a chestnut gelding by the name of Moon Echo. He was a beautiful, big, kind, gentle gelding. Quite strong to ride in track work. He was definitely not easy in his gallops. He was a bit of a puller, but beautiful natured horse, and I kept in contact with him and his life after racing, and he's now 23 years old and living very well down in the Barossa in South Australia.
Well, what I love about this is he had 64 starts. He won 4, placed 18 times, but he's still, he's 23. He's not, a broken down horse. He's a tough sound horse, obviously, and still very much loved.
Yeah, correct. Bruce is a lovely, kind trainer, and Moon Echo was a great bread and butter horse, and he retired sound, and it was really important to us in the stable to rehome all of the horses who retire from racing and then follow their careers thereafter.
How much did that build a passion in you for the work you do now with Racing Queensland and the off-the-track programs?
That's where my passion started. I'd always grown up with off-the-track horses, and then naturally when I went to university, wanted a job to supplement my income while I was studying, and naturally fell into riding track work and also working as a stable hand as well. So through that job I was able to rehome lots of off-the-track horses, and I'd get to cherry pick all of my favourite ones and then compete in them in show jumping and eventing.
And it's a great basis. I mean, you're doing this wonderful job that's so important for thoroughbreds and of course the people that rehome them to learn more from what you do with your Racing Queensland programs. But it's a real passion for you, isn't it?
An absolute passion. I love the thoroughbred, and I would never own another breed, so be able to do this now and develop the Queensland Off the Track program, it's just an absolute dream job.
4 Daybreakers held that class record for the best part of 9 years.
That is Thoroughbreds Are Go for this week. Join me again next week for the final show of the series as we bring you the Thoroughbred Sport Horse National Championships, attracting hundreds of competitors and great backing from the racing and breeding industry. And we're back with Kim Duffy of Racing Queensland on some great programs helping thoroughbreds in their new homes in the Sunshine State. That's next week. I'm Caroline Searcy. I look forward to seeing you then.
This program is brought to you by Tab. We're on. Download the app today. What are you really gambling with?